All right. Well, good morning. Good Friday morning to everybody. We'll be really quick on what happened this week. Single most important thing we talked about last week with you all was the loophole for the sex offender notification, knowing that that was a critically important part of what we thought public safety, and especially in consideration of what may or may not be happening in the next few days or weeks, depending on who you talk to. We read the statute. We thought it could be imminent, but maybe it will be a few days. We believed and worked very closely with the governor. I believe he has signed the bill now, so we're very positive on that. That was something that we thought was critically important, but also something that we could agree on a bipartisan and work very quickly along with our Senate colleagues as well in both the House and Senate Republican and Democrat caucuses. So a good sign and a good thing for public safety. We did have a few more things moving through committee, and just as you all know because you're down here, but I think a little too often this week we heard what's going on, what are you doing, where are you? If any of you are willing to stop by some of the committee hearing rooms, you can be, you will be very quickly updated on where things are. Our members are in committee, as it is this time of year, scrambling from third floor to fourth floor to fifth floor, back and forth in committee rooms. This is the heart of committee time right now, so we're very busy in committees. Our chairs are moving bills. I think in one case there were 4 or 5 different bills moved from one committee to the next this week that will start to then move through the process onto the floor. So it is a committee-intensive part of the process. You all know it because you're here every day, you're here every year, but for those that maybe are taking advantage of a political situation to score some cheap points, there's a committee process that is happening right now, and it is working very, very well, and I would say very deeply, too. So with that, we continue to look for next week. We're going to have the angel investment tax credit will be up in the tax committee. Health and Human Services is going to do some of the transparency with managed care programming, and then State Government Finance is going to have some of the contract reform restrictions with regards to state contracts. So those committees will be, again, chugging right along, and then we'll be on the floor, I believe, Monday and Thursday, possibly Wednesday. That my first opportunity to be here with the Deputy Majority Leader, Senator Ortman.
Well, good morning. Good to be here. The Senate had a very busy week, as you know. We yesterday took up the sexual offender notification bill. We are very pleased that the governor has signed that bill. I think that's bill number 2 this session. We also took up yesterday and passed the Castle Doctrine, sent that bill over to the House. We had bipartisan support, 40 votes in the Senate, for the Castle Doctrine. That was a very important part of our agenda, but the timing of it, I would say, more importantly, it fits in with or complements our reforms 2.0. We've been working on regulatory reform, passing through committees. Voter ID, a very important part of our work this year, passed through the State Government Committee. We had hearings on the repeal of the business property tax, the statewide business property tax. 3 bills are advancing in the Senate right now on that. One from Senator Peterson, which was the proposal that the governor vetoed last year, a very moderate plan to phase out and eliminate the statewide business property tax. It's a very high priority for us in the Senate and in the legislature, because eliminating the state general levy will have an impact across the entire state on all businesses, small and large, whether they're making money or not making money, and will allow them to reinvest in their communities. So we want to help Main Street, Minnesota, in some of those rural towns. We don't need any more vacancies. What we need is for those small business owners to be able to succeed, stay in their business, and engage in economic activity. This is one of the best ways to stimulate the economy, job growth in the state of Minnesota. Far better than what we've seen from the governor's jobs plan. He's got 3 basic provisions. We've tried to get that to a hearing, the 3 provisions being the Viking Stadium is one of them, the tax credit. Senator Skoye is carrying a couple of those. We sent them to the Jobs Committee. He withdrew them from an agenda, so they were taken off the agenda. Senator Skoye not ready for them. But we will continue to work on the statewide business property tax. In the tax committee, we also have up next week TIF and local provisions. So that's what's happening in the week ahead. We do also have on the Senate floor on Monday at 11 o'clock Senator Pam Wolf's LIFO bill. So we'll take that up on Monday.
Anything else next week?
Well, you all know that the budget forecast will be out. We are looking for very good news. Last year at this time, we heard that we had a budget deficit of $5.2 billion. As you know, through strong fiscal discipline, we now have a surplus of $876 million. We've had a really good turnaround, and we're hopeful with some of the changes in federal tax law and with additional fiscal discipline and the work ethic of Minnesotans that we will see positive information coming out of that report in later this week.
You say you're looking for very good news. Do you think it might alter some of your priorities? If there's a larger surplus, are you going to be able to spend more?
Well, our priorities are our priorities. Honestly, jobs and economic growth, providing a climate that encourages that growth, that's still a priority. So how that fits in, hopefully it'll be good news and allow us to do more.
Do you have a prediction on that, Mr. Speaker?
Well, I mean, to Senator Ortman's point, especially the payroll tax budget deal out of Washington helps. I think when the state economist Stinson was here, he said if it wasn't passed when we wrote through the November forecast, it would be about a $300 million hit to our surplus. So having that in there will really help. I think from what I've tracked in talking with Chair Holberg, the spending will be down a little bit again. It'd be nice if we hit $1 billion, but 876, 950, any of those numbers would be good as long as it stays positive like that. And I do believe it'll stay positive. But first and foremost, filling up that cash flow account was number one thing, because it was very concerning to a lot of us. Just for the institution that we had to have a committee hearing about short-term borrowing. And to take out a line of credit was something a little, I don't know if it's ever been done around here in the past, but at least in my time we hadn't had to worry about that. So filling up that cash flow and making sure that that's solvent was a real big priority for us. It's nice to have a budget reserve. It would be nice to keep it and then look, as Senator Ortman said, look at some of these things long term. I've had a bill to repeal the business tax rate for as long as I've been down here. Looking at those things in future budget years going forward, that would be a statement to our business community. That would be a statement to business owners looking at Minnesota that not only are we prepared to keep our fiscal house in order for the next 2 years, but here's what's coming in the next 4 years, 6 years.
If it would be negative, are you prepared to pivot and do what needs to be done to
Absolutely.
Fix it?
Yep. I mean, we will, we'll prepare as we always have for whatever the situation is. But there were some things that we believed, some cost savings that were left on the table. That's what you'll see in some of these reform bills that are coming forward now. Some of the things that, based on last year, we couldn't book savings, or the fiscal notes came back with what we believed would be savings. They came back as a cost. So now that they're, we don't have to worry about the savings. We're doing some of these things that are actually reform agenda items, back office consolidation, some of these things that we've talked many times with you guys about, we can do for the reform's sake now. So, but there are things that we believe are still available to us if we need to do some savings, but don't believe it will have to do that.
I wonder what the two chambers are learning about working with the governor. A couple weeks ago, he had 4 vetoes in a week. He signed 2 bills today. I think in the State of the State, he really telegraphed that if you work with me and engage, do you feel like you're getting into a rhythm now with him with a couple bills signed in terms of, engaging his office, getting some DFL votes put up on some of these bills?
Well, yeah, I mean, there were DFL votes on the tort reform bills. I think one of them was 66-1. I mean, so we've said all along, I mean, you all know, I've said many times that it's never personal. It's about looking at these things. The bills that we are bringing forward are what we've heard from Minnesotans, whether it be job providers, whether it be families when it comes to LIFO, wanting the best teacher in the classroom, the best possible teacher in their classroom, whether it's some of the permitting when you talk to business owners that look at it and say, well, this took me this long, we expected 6 months, now it's a year later. So a lot of the things that we're bringing forward aren't personal to us as a caucus and shouldn't be to the...
Signed 2 bills this week instead of the earlier vetoes. It seems like maybe the tone changed a little bit. Is it engaging him, negotiating with him that makes the difference?
I would say because of one of the authors, obviously charming personality and be able to negotiate. But, and some of them, the sex offender thing, I think that was just, that's easy. That's common sense. And to find it, you come across these things in hearings. That's why, again, why hearings are important. That's why you've seen so many of our hearings and our members in hearings this week. But that was one you found a problem. We were easy to solve very quickly. We consulted with him right away as we were getting ready, Representative Dean and I and Senator Ortman. And then as it went through the process, we're very clear. That's what we've been doing all along. We'll continue to do it. If there's some miscommunication there, we'll try to correct it. But we're here with you each week, letting you know. We're letting the governor know, and our members still continue to meet with them as their bills are coming through the process when available and when he's available. But that's the process we'll continue. That's the process that's happened here as long as I've been here. Governor Pawlenty met with Democrat colleagues, whether it was Speaker Kelleher or Senator Poggenmiller. Maybe not as frequently with some of them, but.
Can you talk about ALEC for a minute? When the governor vetoed the tort reform bills, he mentioned ALEC and said people in Minnesota, expect their bills to be drafted here and not by national organizations.
Maybe I'll let Senator Ortman, since she drafted one of the bills, or two of the bills actually.
3. Regardless of where it comes from, and I have said this before, I'm not a member of ALEC, and those bills did not come from ALEC, but regardless of where it comes from, a good idea that's brought to the legislature should be considered. And folks in our district care about these issues, and when they bring them forward, I think that we have a responsibility to look at them. And the provisions that we pass through the Senate and the House are provisions that would make us more competitive in relation to other states. It would help bring down the fixed costs of doing business. It would bring down the costs of participating in a lawsuit, whether you are a plaintiff, a defendant, or an individual, or a business. And so that's something that's good for Minnesota, regardless of where the idea generates. But there was a lot of thought here among members. We took a lot of testimony. We had the participation of businesses and individual participants in the court system. And so what was generated and what was passed was a very good work product, and I think that it was short shrift given by the governor to that work, and I am still disappointed. But, however, I have spoken with Chief Justice Gilday. We are working on a meeting with the governor. Hopefully that will take place this week. Our business owners that were advocates for these bills are also working to meet with the governor to see if there's any way we can recraft them, repackage them, and get them passed. So we're working on it.
The Supreme Court task force in his veto.
Yeah, an interesting thing about these bills that are not what you might think. The governor said he wanted us to engage the courts, but these are public policy decisions that the courts do not make, and they don't testify at the Capitol. The judges aren't going to come and say, well, we should have a shorter statute of limitations. That's not within their scope within our separation of powers. So it really comes back to policymakers about what that statute of limitations should be, or what the jurisdictional limit should be in conciliation court. And we're going to visit with the governor about that, and we'll talk about the task force reports. But these are public policy decisions, and we've made very strong recommendations to the governor, and hopefully with more conversation he'll understand and he'll agree with us.
Senator, will the constitutional amendment photo ID bill be on the Senate floor next week?
I don't think it'll go this week. It passed through the State Government Committee this week in advance. I think it went to the Finance Committee. But it is advancing, and it is a very high priority.
So not next week?
I don't believe it's going to make it next week.
Speaker, what are you folks going to do with the Castle Doctrine?
Well, I think we passed parts of it last year as part of an omnibus bill. So, as soon as it comes over, we'll look to move it, through the process, as quickly as it comes over. But
You'll send it back to committee?
No,
You won't
I
just
don't
accept
think-
amendments?
yeah, I think it's actually. I think you've worked with Senator Senator Ortman's worked with Representative Cornish on a lot of these things. So I think it's probably, make sure that Tony and some of the authors are okay with the language, but we could pass it, as well. So, but I think it's probably has gone through the process as well as it has. It's probably about as finished as it's going to need to be.
What happened to split the Republicans from law enforcement? I mean, you used to be the party of law and order, and on issue after issue, I find, I'm not saying who's right, but the law enforcement community is up here saying one thing, and the Republican Party is doing the other thing. Castle Doctrine being the most recent example. What happened? I thought you were supportive of the police, prosecutors,
And we are.
chiefs.
We absolutely are. Castle Doctrine, and I think, when it came to the concealed carry permitting thing, we had some of the same things. There were some of the proponents were, screaming wildly that the sky was going to fall, there was going to be shootouts in the, out in the streets, and hundreds of thousands of permits were going to be issued. And it came back and it was nothing, and we haven't seen any of the these Chicken Little scenarios that sky was going to fall. So I think it's maybe a position from them as an organization. The support that I receive and the conversations I have with police, whether it's troopers, county deputies, Minneapolis police, Maple Grove police,
So you just don't trust the leaders of the main police
I think
officers,
that's
chiefs, and prosecutors' organizations.
I
You don't believe them.
I think that's an over-exaggeration and unfair statement.
But you're completely separate from them. You don't pay any attention to what they say anymore.
We absolutely do. But you look at especially with the loophole for the sex offender thing, I don't think that any of them came out and said, and if I'm wrong, I'll be happy to be corrected, but they said, no, don't close that loophole. I mean, so...
They said this bill would make it more dangerous for police officers on the street.
Well, again, maybe some of the
You
chiefs...
don't believe them.
Maybe some of the chiefs, maybe some of the leadership, but some of the rank and file that I've talked to don't believe that. So I think it's just like any of these other things. You will have leadership maybe saying one thing, you maybe have rank and file saying the other thing. I'm more than willing to, especially when it comes to the concealed carry, let the evidence speak for itself. And I think on that issue it has. But as far as our support for police and fire, I mean, other than that, I don't believe there's been anything where I've had multiple police officers stop me in the hallways. Had a Maple Grove police officers, stop me at the gym the other day and say, "Hey, thanks for the loophole and closing that. That's a good thing. You guys should have done that." So, I don't think that there's been a huge rift between the Republicans and the police or the fire. I enjoy their support and endorsements every year and have not had any major complaints in my office from them. But I don't want to speak for the senator.
There's no rift. There is a respectful disagreement about this bill as there was with the concealed carry permit. And these same folks are the ones that are, conducting the investigations and granting these concealed carry permits. They probably have the best ability of all to decide who should be carrying a gun in Minnesota. When it comes to the Castle Doctrine, it's not really about the use of force activity. That bill is all about what happens in the court of law afterwards and making sure that law-abiding citizens have a rebuttable presumption that they've acted in self-defense under certain circumstances. It wouldn't apply to somebody who is illegally carrying a gun. We're talking about law-abiding citizens who've been granted permits or are using a gun in their premises. So I think, the facts are really important here. I would say I'm very supportive of the chiefs and the county attorneys, but when residents have constitutional rights, those constitutional rights are never a threat to law enforcement, and I gave multiple examples of that on the Senate floor. Our constitutional rights should be meaningful, including the Second Amendment. That means that law-abiding citizens should be able to carry a gun. It's right there in the Constitution. And so we have probable cause requirements, we have warrant requirements, we have indictment requirements in our Constitution. And so it's not a threat to law enforcement, it's a balancing of the rights. And we have to remember, we're talking about self-government, we're talking about sovereign citizens. That is what we are. That's the whole concept of a democracy, is that the citizens are in charge and self-governing. And those constitutional rights have to mean something, and that's what that action was about yesterday. It was about making sure that Minnesotans have constitutional rights that are meaningful. What we're talking about is about these rebuttable presumptions in court. It just says that there's a presumption that the actor was using self-defense. A county attorney, the chief, and the local law enforcement can present evidence to the contrary and rebut the presumption, and somebody can still be convicted if they haven't been acting in self-defense. The jury should be able to decide that, and that's basically what we were supporting yesterday when we voted for the Castle Doctrine.
On the business property tax issue, yesterday we saw it tied to a Viking Stadium proposal. The governor kind of rejected that notion out of hand, but also kind of criticized the idea of phasing it out entirely. I'm wondering what the future is in terms of working with the governor on that, and how do you see that? I mean, some suggested that opened the door for it being a bargaining chip of some kind. I mean, what are you willing to give up to get the business property tax over the government's objections? How do you see this playing out, given that you've said all along that this is something you want to get through this session?
I don't know how it's going to play out. My crystal ball is kind of as cloudy as yours is right now. I hope we're going to see a little bit more clearly soon. But I think everybody's trying to figure out if there's some way to put together a package for the governor. The Speaker and Majority Leader Senjum and I and others joined the governor for breakfast last week. That was all of us collaborating. And we had a great conversation about the business property tax, and I think the governor is more interested in that, in particular with the inflator that has brought it to a level of $800 million in taxation of our businesses for the state, from where it began in 2001 at $540 million. So that automatic inflator is clearly of interest to the governor. He's also concerned about Main Street, Minnesota, as I talked about before, about all those vacancies and making sure Minnesotans can stay in their businesses. So he has authorized the commissioner to begin conversations about that. We are going to be working very hard to see if there's some way we can agree, because, as he said, the economy and jobs is his top priority. We think this is the best way to address it. So I think his commitment to that will mean, I think we will see some collaboration on the business property tax.
Any stadium developments different from last week? I have to ask that question just for everyone's benefit here.
It's not his fault. Flag the clock. 10-2. Got 20 minutes in. Good job. No, I mean, it was imminent. It was right there. It was going to happen, and Friday, 10 to 11, it still hasn't happened. So we continue to focus on what our reform agenda is. The advocates, the proponents, continue to focus on the proposal. If they get to that point, we'll address it.
What bills are on the House floor next week?
I don't know. Representative Dean, I don't know if has had a rules committee yet, but I think there'll be some smaller bills, some 134 to nothing bills probably, and then we'll see what bills are moving through the committee process. But the angel investment tax credit and tax committee, I think that'll be a big one. That's something that we passed bipartisanly last year that has been very, very successful. We've seen a lot of folks using that to start up some small medical device tax type things. So I think that's probably one of those things moving through, but it'll depend on where we're at in the committee process. I think some of the permitting and those bills have been moving more quickly, but I'm not sure what's in Ways and Means and what'll come to rules. But Brody will let you know on Monday, hopefully.
Senator Ortman, are you worried about, you said photo ID was a high priority, are you worried about an as-applied court challenge to that? Indiana is facially held up, but there's still the chance that if they can bring forward some disenfranchised voter, it could be shot down. What do you think about that here?
Well, I understand that the Indiana law has been upheld.
On its face, but not as applied. There's not
Right.
been an applied challenge.
There always, can be legal challenges. But, that's part of adopting a major change like that. But this is really important, I think, after the governor's veto of that voter ID bill last year. It's important that we do take the question to the voters. Then they can give us the higher authority by virtue of their action. The enacting language can come after that. When we ask the question, we don't have to have all of the details in a row. Like with the cultural heritage tax that we passed a couple of years ago, if you remember, the legislature had to come in the following year and come up with a distribution plan. How do you decide where all that money is going to go? We did that after the fact, and so that may well happen with our voter ID bill as well, that we ask the voters, we get an answer, and then if it becomes a priority and it's a constitutional element, then we go back to work on the statutory enacting language. But we're going to try and answer as many of the application questions throughout the process, and we'll have some good legislative history on that. But you can't stop anyone from bringing a lawsuit on an application ground or some other basis, and hopefully it will withstand scrutiny.
The judge handling the child care unionization said the decision could take 3 months to come out to final decision. Does that change at all what you're hoping to do on that front this session? Are you concerned that it could be resolved after session? I know there's some bills that have been moving through already, but
yeah, obviously we had one 2 weeks ago now. In talking with some of the daycare providers, the Miss Steph and Miss Kaylee, who took care of Reagan and Will, they're still very concerned about it. I mean, you're talking about a 20 to 30% increase in the cost of in-home daycare. And again, when both our kids were in there, it was almost the same as our mortgage payment. So you talk about small middle-class families middle-class families with two small kids. That is a huge cost to them and their family budget. So still very concerned about it, and we are as well. So we would prefer a legislative solution. We're going to work towards that end. But again, to the senator's point, the courts are separate yet equal and can proceed on their own timeline. But we believe that it does have a legislative solution that needs to be put forward. We're going to continue to work on that as the session goes along as well.
I would just add one thing, that lawsuit accomplished its purpose, which was to slow down the governor in advancing an executive order that was beyond the scope of his authority, and the judge agreed. So now we have time to look at it legislatively. So it's accomplished its purpose. But we are still hearing from daycare providers from across the state that this is important.
Union election, right, legislatively.
Pardon me?
You're not going to allow, there's no question that you would allow a union election legislatively, is there?
That we would allow it?
Yeah, that you would pass a bill allowing a union election.
So it's not going to work.
So you're not really considering what they want, you're trying to block it.
Well, but to the senator's point, we don't think he has the authority. So it wasn't our idea in the first place. All right, if not, have a good weekend, everybody.
Thank you.